meeting, but I did get a chance to listen to it yesterday in the car, which was the first time I've gotten to do that. And I just wanted to address a couple of things from Steve Whitaker in his comments. The first one is he's been talking a lot about the Act 250 exemptions at Country Club Road, and the state has an official map. It is like interim, but if I compare it to the map that Steve brought into us, it's different. And so I would personally, from a planning commission perspective, look at the state's official map. And I'll just say that what it does, and folks can find it very easily, is it basically goes up to the northeastern corner of the property. So the northeastern corner where it's very high up, it's basically the top of the sledding hill at the Country Club Road. That's the section that is outside of the interim Act 250 exemptions. It goes much further than the boundary that was presented on Steve's map. So I just wanted to put that out there as something to consider. And then I was also looking at the statutes. He was referring to Title 24, Chapter 117, which is the planning commissions, regional planning commissions, and municipal planning commissions statutes for the state of Vermont. I assume he didn't say directly, but I assume that he was talking about 4325, which is the powers and duties of planning commissions. And it includes what municipal planning commissions it says undertake capacity studies and make recommendations on matters of land development, urban renewal, transportation, economic and social development. So it says prepare and present a recommended capital budget and program. These are things that we've heard from Steve over the years. At the top of this section, though, it says any planning commission created under this chapter may. It does not say shall. So my reading and understanding is that this is under the jurisdiction of the planning commission, should they choose to take it on. It also includes hold public meetings. So we may and do choose to hold these public meetings. This is my reading of the statute. So I think we've talked about this before. If I'm reading it accurately, and if Steve would like a response, and if he hasn't gotten a response yet, which he hadn't 2 weeks ago, I think we can point to that language simply that the planning commissions may.
Yeah, so Aaron and I have discussed this, and we thought it could be a topic on a future agenda to have just like go through our authorization again, especially for people who weren't here the last time we did that, and just kind of understand how like the regional planning commission fits together with the planning department, how that fits together with the planning commission,
right?
Because there are of course cities and towns that don't have a career planning department like Montpelier does, and so you could imagine that a planning commission then would have more responsibilities.
Or choose to take on more responsibilities. It's still, for them, is not a shall, it is also a may, as I read it.
But yeah, should we put that on a future agenda? Just for you.
Yeah,
that again.
It's been noted, and we will get it on. Yeah, the only things that are really your responsibilities are the city plan.
Yeah.
And changes to the zoning regulations have to start here. So city council can't adopt a city plan and skip you guys, and they can't create their own set of zoning regulations and skip you. That has to go through your review before going to council. But other than that, it's much more open as to what items you take on and what items may be assigned to other boards.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, general business from the public. Any comments from the public about something not on the agenda? We have a couple people online.
All right. Yeah, they may just listen.
Listening in. Okay, so next up is the Country Club Road proposals.
All right, so I am going to start with a quick, there's a video that's been put out. It's 10 minutes long, so I'll probably just play the video because this is what is kind of being shown. We want to put everybody on the same playing field, and then we can kind of go from there. And we can, at that point, go with whatever board members want to talk about. If you want to have some conversation about the proposals, we can do that, or we can leave it up to you guys to go through them on your own. It's really how much time and what questions you guys have, but they don't really explain the proposals, which I thought was going to be in the video, but when I watched it, I was like, oh, it's really a summary of the process, but we'll go through the summary of the process. But let me start with all right, so you should be able to see the front page of the city's website. So if anyone wants to find Country Club Road, if you scroll down to latest news, you will see Country Club Road information. You can click on the box, you can click on the Club Road information, and it is a shortcut that will take you here, which is the Country Club Road site and the current work. And what we have in the middle are the proposals, and then on the right we have a video. And so let me see, I'm going to just play the video and then we will come back to the proposals. That did not work. All right, I clearly messed that one up. Problem is, once you've got all these boards, it becomes very hard to find. Right. Oh, it's actually playing. I want to do this. I don't have volume. So I'm not sure what I have to do to get volume.
Is there a setting to share the audio when you share the video the first time that you share your screen?
This has worked in the past with the videos that you've had.
Yeah, I thought so. And I tested it today to make sure it would work, and it worked. I just didn't test it on
The
Zoom.
computer's not muted, is it?
Well, let me see if I but if I turn my speakers off, then it comes through my speakers here and we get feedback. So.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I guess we'll cut out 10 minutes here because we can't actually listen to it, with apologies. But this 10-minute video will go through a little bit of the history, a little bit of the proposals, how to find things, and then tell you about Thursday, 12th, 6 o'clock, inviting everybody, show up, please show up and give us your input, and they will show this video and it will work. But what they're trying to point you to are two things. First, you've got these proposals, which you can go through, and I will walk each of you through these if you'd like. And to click here to download the proposed review matrix. So that will help you give your input, or share your thoughts is up here. So there you go. You can go to share your thoughts. That will take you to a survey. That is where we're trying to point everybody to, because we expect to get a lot of comments. So we're trying not to have 75 emails, and we're trying to as many people as they can. If you can't and you have to send an email, we're not going to discard it just because it was there or handwritten or whatever. We're going to try to give as many options. And Gabe, you've got your hand up.
Maria, I've got two specific questions, but if you have another way you want to go through this, I'll just stand by and wait.
Okay, Gabe, your audio is cutting in and out.
Can you hear me?
You said he had
Can
two.
you
Try there? That's better.
Yep,
Okay.
that's better.
Yeah, so I have two questions, but I can wait. I don't know how you want to work through the commission on this, but they're specific to the proposals.
I would like to go through each proposal. And Mike, do you know enough about each one to kind of give us?
I will, because we're trying not to bias everybody with staff opinions. I'll just go through really quick.
Has anybody reviewed these yet? I spent my weekend down at a soccer tournament, and since I was sitting in a hotel for a good chunk of time, I went through all of them.
I was not at a soccer tournament, so I reviewed them very briefly.
Sounds like you were in a position to.
Well, Maria, also in the past, you said that you thought about having the commission potentially submit our thoughts as a body rather than individually. I don't know if that's still something.
If I can just chime in here real quick, I actually just fairly recently, our former chair Ariane forwarded me a communication from City Council. They still think that she's the chair, which is probably how it should be, but I digress. But they have actually reached out and are asking for the commission's thoughts on these proposals, but they're asking that we get them feedback preferably by next Monday, the 16th, because they're going to be scheduling interviews with these folks starting the 16th through April 3rd. So we can submit any comments after the 16th, but they said, they could be midstream in terms of conducting interviews. So that is a very tough time turnaround for us, but I just kind of want to preface this presentation with that, which is they've affirmatively reached out to us. They want to know what we think. So we can discuss what, if anything, we might want to submit as a group, and how we do that once we go through these presentations, I think would be the best way to do it.
So I feel like that means we should definitely go through all of them.
So I'll just hit the highlights on each of these. And again, I'm trying to kind of give this a little bit of a neutral position. It really depends what your thinking ideas are, goals are. But I just, based on the ones I have, the order I have on my screen. So these are very long, and yes, Aaron's right. We are looking for next Monday because we're going to be asking questions. One of the big things that was mentioned in the video is really the job of the public. This isn't a public vote. This isn't a public. It really is. We want to hear people's opinions, and we want questions that we should be asking. We staff, or we the subcommittee, when they start interviewing. So that's really the focus of what we're trying to do, because there's information that you're not going to end up. There's a second set of these that are confidential, that have a lot of the financial informations and other things that you're not going to be able to take a look at. So we have a completely separate contract with another individual who is doing the financial analyses. So everything might look wonderful and beautiful, and that's great. And then somebody takes a look at it and says, yeah, but it's needs a little bit of magic to make that one work, or this one would be a higher risk for this or that reason. And it's up to the council to then go through and weigh, do we take the one that's low risk, or do we take the one that's a higher risk? And the public, based on the information you have, might not be able to make that assessment. So just a little bit of a preface. They're looking for questions. What do you see that you're like, boy, can they make that change, or I really like this one, or I really like that one. That's what they're really looking for, because they want to be able to take something to the interviews when we start interviewing candidates to kind of get a sense of what's going on. So the first one I pulled up is Penrose, and it's 115 pages. So these are really long. They've got a lot of information on what who are the partners, who's working on this. But if you're looking on Penrose to find out where they actually start talking about the project, it's on page 49. So if you're looking for your shortcut, that's where it is. And the quick discussions, quick summary of theirs, they're talking about total proposed units of about 286. They are primarily rentals. They've got some owner occupied, but they're primarily rentals. You're talking mid-rise apartments, walk-ups, townhomes. They have a lot of affordability in theirs. They have some units, 58 units that are low to moderate, the less than 30% LMI, but a majority of theirs are either AMI, that 80 to 120% AMI. So that's adjusted median income. So you're talking in our RFP, we wanted to offer this site to get workforce housing. And so workforce housing is basically 80 to 120% of adjusted median income, AMI. LMI is this lower class. So these guys have a lot of different levels of subsidized housing units. And so, I mean, that's really a quick summary of what makes theirs unique or different. That's a quick summary of theirs. I've got a couple of pieces here, but I think I'll stick with that as the start. And let me see if it pops up. That's there. This is a little bit small. Let me see if I can zoom in. So, especially for people who may have seen the original land use maps. So this is what they are looking at. So if you're coming up Country Club Road, you have this box here. That is the existing clubhouse. They're proposing putting in some units downhill of that on the right, and in the parking lot and up and around to the left. They also then go up the hill to a final phase where they have talked about potentially, this is lower density, these could potentially be owner occupied. This is the area they say could be, but most of these in their model would all be rentals. Because they are building on the parking lots, they have proposed to build in new parking lots. But the rest of the recreation area would remain the recreation area. And this area, which we had laid out for potential building, everybody did the same thing. Nobody built out here. So you'll see that consistently. So really quick, that's the highlight of Penrose. I think of Penrose, they're the rental ones. EquiSuite. So they have a proposal, and then they've got an appendices which have a lot more information in their proposal. It really starts right out at the start, describing their concepts. Their concepts are about 340 units, 80 rental, 251 owned homes, tiny homes, single family homes, smaller units, 48% affordable at less than 80% AMI. So that's that LMI less than 80%. So they've got half the units are in that lower income. And so these are more, they have a lot of discussion on these. Kind of more working on prefab homes, that approach to their development plan. And again, you can see they do a little bit of theirs. Let me see, maybe I can make this a little bigger. Move it over. So if you're coming up, you've got the same building at the bottom. Oh, you guys had it moved. Why aren't you guys moving? There it goes. We've got a real delay. I'll have to keep an eye on my delay. So at the bottom, we have the Country Club Road building. So you're coming up, you come to Country Club Road. Their parking lot remains the same. This is all untouched. So you see most of the recreation area remains the recreation area, and the road turns to the left. They have a large development in here with some of the parking on the outside, and most of these are kind of interior walking streets. So you don't actually drive up to your units. And then you can come around up to the upper part of the field where you've got more units, and then it comes back down into the other side. So they've got just different concepts. I'm trying to see if we've got, there we go. So they've got a lot of pictures in theirs. So it'll give you a sense of what they envision this to look like. And that's the upper area. So that gives you a sense of what theirs were. So yeah, I went through all of theirs.
Are all of these mixed use so far?
These are all strictly residential. I don't believe
There's
of the two that we've looked at.
Yeah, there's no commercial in the Penrose at all. And the executive suite has a cafe.
Okay.
And then they discuss the potential for first floor services in some buildings, but it's vague. So I would say very limited mixed use.
Okay. Thank you.
So DEW, if you're looking for theirs, there's a 98-page proposal. If you're looking for it, you've got to go all the way to the back, page 70. That's usually what we hear when people have looked at these. They're like, where are the pictures? Where are the pictures? Like, some cases, it's page 70 of 98. So DEW is about 250, 249 units. 225 would be apartments. 24 to 25 would be owned homes. Apartments are multi-unit buildings, and then a couple, the other ones, the owned ones, are single-family tiny homes. Some are tied to shared equity programs, and they are using 3 development zones in there. So again, 340 units, primarily apartments. So they've got a phasing strategy. So we are moving up there. Site plan design approach. So if you read through this, gives you much more detail than what I'm giving you. I'm trying to just give you the high level. So let's let the world catch up with us. Speed of light's not what it used to. Used to be. Do it. A bit more. There we go. All right. So again, we've got, you can see the white square for the top of the Country Club Road building. That's where the daycare facility is. This is where the rec zone is, and you've got all the rec facilities. So they honor the rec zone. They don't borrow any land from them. The roads come out. They're going to have 3 buildings in the lower area to the left. Those are primarily intended to be owned and operated by Downstreet and developed over time. Then you can go up top, and there would be some more rental housing, and then some of these low density areas that are highlighted would be areas that would have some single family homes. So it's a pretty straightforward proposal. Some sections in that they go into their phasing, how they would phase the project, and then they have, let me see if we can get to this is the picture. Come on. There we go. There's your buildings that are down in the bottom. So that's the proposals for the 3 buildings in the bottom would roughly have that layout and architectural plan. And there would be 35 units in each one of those buildings. Our final one, and this one, they've got their proposal discussed in the front, and I believe their pictures are in the back. So This is Chinburg. So Chinburg is total of 310 units, 250 rentals, 60 owned, multifamily apartments, townhomes, single-family homes. They have the least number of affordable units, but they also have 10,000 square feet of retail. And so a lot of their proposal is kind of laid out here at the start of the document. And they'll talk about the design, the approach, and then we'll see how long it takes our screen to catch up, because I've got to jump all the way to, let's see if we do it this way. All right. So actually you can see it because it's not behind the people on your screen. So in this one here, you're coming up Country Club Road and you see the box on the bottom again. That's the Country Club Road building. Their road then kind of swirls around and heads up. So they pretty much build right over all of the rec zone. So that's just a fact. And they also have the rec zone out here, more of the building out here. And we are waiting to kind of hear what because we've told developers it could be a give and take. If you give from here, you could take from there, and it could be an exchange. That's why you see in Penrose, they built over the parking lots and then replaced their parking, the rec zone parking. So they've tried to do a give and take. So this proposal puts in a lot of housing all at the bottom. I mean, there's a lot of development right down here at the bottom. It's just all over the rec zone. And there's actually a lot of potential that could go out here if we wanted to continue to develop out here with a different developer in the future. There'd be a lot more room. But again, as you're looking through them, Chinburg, like I said, I'm just trying to stick to the facts of what there is and let you guys kind of talk about, because it really kind of comes down to what you see as priorities and goals. Certainly because recreation paid for this, it's part of the RFP was that you're supposed to protect the rec area. That could be, the important piece, or the maximizing housing, or whatever, the affordability. In this case, it doesn't have the most affordability. That would be, Penrose, but Penrose doesn't have owner occupied, and maybe you believe owner occupied or a balance of owner occupied is important. It just comes down to what your priorities are really, but we've got 4 proposals, all of which, they all propose that they are viable, and we will go through the economics to determine maybe all 4 of these are viable. You should assume they're all viable. And then we will go through and make those evaluations to determine which ones people like, which ones people don't like, and kind of take it all from there. So that's my quick summary. And
that's pretty much the summary I would have given based on my review for a quick summary.
Okay.
I think that was very, very fair summary, Mike.
So,
and I can stop sharing if people want.
does anyone
I can
have
always-
any
I can always jump back in if we need them. They're not closed out.
comments or questions about?
I mean, Gabe said he had 2 questions. I
Yeah,
don't know if
let's have Gabe.
We'll start with Gabe.
So Mike, I'll just say, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll just say I am fairly skeptical about the non-local builders and their proposals for rental. If you go to the Middlebury project, which has a lot of financial support behind it and is all being built modular, it's coming in around $550 a square foot. Now that's only possible because there's a ton of grant money. There's missing middle money that's in there. There's ARPA money that's in there. There's a ton of grant money. There's LIHTC money. If you're coming from out of state, right? Like I build in New Hampshire, and I'll tell you, I can build in New Hampshire for $200 a square foot. If I could build for $200 a square foot in Montpelier, then yes, you could rent. It'd be a little bit higher than market rents, but it'd be reasonable for new construction. If they don't have local subcontractors like DEW, they've got their own team, so they can probably do it. I don't have any questions about them, but I do have questions with the. Let me get the names. The guys out of New Hampshire, the Chinburg and the
Chinburg is out of New Hampshire, and Penrose is out of, I believe, southern New England.
I just think with Penrose and Chinburg, you guys should dig into who they think their subs are, because I don't think what they're proposing is actually any way feasible at all. So that's more maybe of a comment, and maybe you have an answer to that already. Maybe they've disclosed who their subcontractors might be, and maybe they have a better plan than what everybody else is doing in Vermont. But I just don't know, like when you look at Vermont, the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, who's been doing this for decades and decades and decades, I just am not sure that somebody from out of state is actually going to be able to do this better than they're doing it all the time.
Gabe, can I ask what about each of those proposals makes you think that it wouldn't be able to be built for $200 a square foot?
It's just not possible to build unless you have your own crews. If you control all of your own costs, right? If they work for you directly, if you have the laborers all work for you and you cut out all the middleman, right? So think about it. If you have to subcontract a plumber, they have to make their 50 and 20% profit. If you have to subcontract the electrician, right? So modular, yeah, it's modular, it's fast, but you still have to have all of the guts have to still be installed, have to be routed, right? All those people are making profit. So again, DEW, if they have their own workforce, they can control that cost because they all are direct employees, right? So they're like, great, we've got these people, or they're subs, but they have the relationships that they can do it for that cost, and they know they can do it. I'm just saying, if you're coming from out of state and you're thinking, oh, we do this all over the country, and they do. Like if you look at their websites, what the projects they do it all over the country. But have you tried to get a plumber to do work in your house? Like there is no workforce here. So if they don't understand that, right? Look at all the reconstruction after the flooding. Like there is no way, like if you look at any projects that are being done, the FECTOs, I've talked to the FECTOs. I mean, I don't know how much they want to really come on record about their own pricing, but if they weren't doing wholesale, they could not do rental. I mean, because they control all of their own costs and they basically can get the modules at wholesale, they can rent. And what they've told me is like, if we miss a couple, we have to really rent we have to rent high end, and we have to rent to really high quality tenants. Because if they miss a rent payment or two, they're losing money, right? And that's guys who do this full-time modular every day, put up the most units. They can't do it. And those units are going for $3,200 a month, right? So that's what the FECTOs can do at wholesale. Somebody from Boston, somebody from New Hampshire, like if you don't know I'm just saying, Mike, like I know you got somebody rubbing, looking at the financials, but I would be asking really, really hard questions about where the workforce is coming from. You could bring in outside workforce, right? You could house them, right? There's a way to do it, and maybe they already have a plan for it. But if you're trying to source that locally, it can't be done.
One of these proposals, their main contractor was somebody from Connecticut that they list in their proposal. One thing about Penrose is that it seemed to me that they were anticipating some form of subsidy, right? That's why they're offering so much affordable housing, that they're anticipating subsidy and potentially long-term tax abatements.
Yeah, they're heavy LIHTC in the Penrose proposal.
Gabe, did you have another question? You said you had two.
Well, I don't know. That was really my other comment is just, I think I mean, I don't know what everybody else, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, when I look at this, what's their name?
Executive suite.
Execu Suite. They seem to incorporate more of the community feedback. And then when you look at some, I mean, obviously they've got some local characters that have kind of plugged into that. That just, just in terms of aesthetics and layout and sort of honoring what we've heard from around the community over the last several years, that project just seems like, okay, this is a lot of stuff that you hear people talking about. So that's another comment. I don't know if that's a question, but
My impression of these four is that aesthetically, I've got three on my list. DEW is uninspiring to me. It just lacks the neighborhood feel and scale that the other three proposals have. That the other three, you can see a cohesive neighborhood in each proposal. And from a purely planning standpoint, those are the three that I have on my long short list.
Wait, so the one that is not due are the ones on your short list? Or did I hear
Sorry,
that?
Lindbergh, ExecuSuite, and Penrose are the ones that I think have the feel. And then, from there, you can talk about the different factors, because they all have very different factors in each one.
Does anyone else have a feeling about
I mean, I almost,
we are here to do this. We're supposed to be the planning, I don't know, professionals here who might have a clue.
I mean, I know that we agreed to do the guiding principles at the end, but it's like, oh, if we had guiding principles right now during this discussion, then, that could maybe help.
Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, the guiding principles though are going to be, that's a long conversation.
And we need something by Monday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have preferences. Do you guys really not have preferences, or are you guys just being shy?
Well, Maria, I'd love to hear yours. I want to hear yours, Maria.
So, I mean, I kind of feel similarly about DEW, and I feel like it doesn't optimize that space as well as the other ones do. Like the other ones, you see like this bounty of housing, and DEW just, I don't know, just doesn't use the space as effectively, I think. I'm not a fan of Penrose, because I feel like Montpelier is currently lacking in that kind of like low cost entry level homeownership. Like houses that when we moved here, houses used to go for 300,000 that are now going for like 500, 600. And like that was only within a decade, prices have doubled. And I feel like there are people out there who are looking to buy homes who don't want to rent, who want to buy, but can't afford to buy like a $500,000 house. And so I like the idea of rentals, but I think only rentals is, just a bit too, I feel like we need more of like a mix of uses and life like trajectories, like, because even going back to like Chinburg and ExecuSuite, I like this, the kind of like the townhouses. I grew up in a townhouse. I'm very pro townhouses. They are low maintenance, people with young kids can live in them. People of a certain age can live in them because they don't require as much maintenance. And I think we just need like a variety. If people want the house with the driveway, they can buy that. If people want a townhome that has like a front patch yard that they don't have to maintain, that could be an option too. If you want to live in an apartment, that could, like I feel like that mix of housing types is really good. So I kind of prefer the Chinburg and ExecuSuite proposals.
Yeah, the thing about Penrose that I also have as a negative on my notes is that it is pretty much exclusively rentals, and that there's no commercial and it's not mixed use in any way. Um, I'm not as opposed to rental housing as Sandy Vitztham is, who is one of the primary architects of the ExecuSuite proposal. My issue with ExecuSuite is that it has almost no rentals. And yes, everybody wants to own their own home. Absolutely.
Maybe there's definitely a period in my life where I didn't want to own a home. You know, like
Right.
in your 20s,
Right.
you don't
But
want to own anything.
yeah, so Sandy did the survey of Montpelier, and overwhelmingly people say, yes, I want to own a home and I want to pay not a lot of money for it, which is everybody's dream. And the thing is that some people just are not in a place in their life that they can do that. And we have to have we need more rentals in Montpelier too. Like the answer is like, which type of housing we need? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have a quick question about the Chimbrick proposal. 10,000 square feet of commercial seems like quite a bit of space, and this is just a question to pose to them. I think is I'm not quite sure what they're like, how they feel, like why they think that that development could support 10,000 square feet of commercial space. I think it's great if it works out, but it just seems striking to me that the other three do not have anything nearly that size. And I just think about looking at the state of downtown as it is right now. Not saying that there won't be better days, but 10,000 square feet just seems like a lot of space that I would hope that they are thinking about how that space could be filled and like what sorts of businesses could go in that space to support the neighborhood, as opposed to putting it in there and having it sit vacant for 5 years before anything goes in.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've heard from people that are concerned about having too much competition with the downtown, downtown businesses. But I don't know. There is I think partially what's going on downtown is that people are hesitant to invest in a business in a flood zone. And so I could imagine a scenario where businesses are interested in going here that are not interested in being downtown. Sadly, I think there should be, to me, I think we need to figure out a way to save the buildings downtown if we're going to let them sit in a flood zone and we are not elevating them.
Yeah, I agree with that. My question is why do they think 10,000 square feet is the right number to support a development of X number of units? Where does that come from? So.
Maybe it's a financial thing.
It could be. Yeah, that was a question that kind of came up when I was looking at this kind of broadly.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I like that there's commercial space there. But yeah, I have no idea what the right number is.
Yeah, I also like the idea of having some, mixed use in there. I think it's a good idea, but again, it's when the other three have pretty much it's nil, and then you have the other one that's just 10,000. It's like, how do they think that that's viable and it makes sense, and maybe they have a good answer for it, and that's great, and it gives us confidence that it's something that the city should consider, in depth.
How about you guys? Tim, there's no need to be shy.
Yeah, well, sometimes I am. For no particular reason.
Answers here.
Yeah, true. I'm definitely at housing first. I agree with Maria that a variety of housing is essential. That it goes from smaller single family homes, townhomes, larger, higher density apartments, whether to own or to rent. But that variety is really important to me. I also, like I said, housing first, which is 100% where I land. And at the same time, I think that the preservation of rec fields would be really nice up there. One of the things that it would ensure is that that space gets used by other folks in the city. That we folks that live in other neighborhoods arrive on weekends or evenings and are as much a part of that community as they are currently, with no houses up there. One of the things that I would be a little bit nervous about is just for the city and the cohesiveness of the city is if we have what feels to be like an outpost that feels disconnected from downtown. I think one of the ways that we preserve that is by maintaining rec fields and maybe trails as well and other recreational opportunities. So housing first, rec second, and a wide variety of housing. I find myself, this might just simply be because I work in mapping, but the way that the Execu Suite folks sort of built into aerial imagery, it allows me to really understand their concept very well. They also have some nice oblique images, and in those images you see a lot of variety of housing. Those particular that particular proposal I find myself gravitating towards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything excitingly new to add. I will say that with Penrose, and they talk about retaining long-term ownership of primarily these, rental units, that makes me nervous as someone that has mostly rented and only am a new homeowner in my life. Yeah, just having one uh property management company in a whole neighborhood, that's a lot of control for just one company to have over, you know, upkeep and raising rent and things like that. So yeah, that just makes me nervous. Um, I'd love to have actual opportunities to own affordable homes. Um, trying to think. What else? I do like the idea of integrating some commercial buildings. Um, as someone that lives on the other side of the river, I feel like that is kind of the part of Montpelier that is also sort of like sequestered from the downtown, and so it's not that bad, I guess. So I'm thinking like with Country Club Road, if that feels a little sequestered, maybe it'd be like a similar feel, like maybe it wouldn't be as sequestered, and maybe it wouldn't be as isolated. So I'm not like super worried about that. And so I live, there's that like whole condominium sort of neighborhood over on Freedom, that was kind of like the National Life sort of housing neighborhood that I'm in. And those are lovely. Oh my gosh, I need to make a friend that has a pool over there. So like have a community pool. Yeah, there's a great green space over there. So I don't know. I guess I just really am hesitant about Penrose's proposal being primarily rentals owned by the developer and the only that one company in charge of all of the rentals, and the rest of them, um, yeah, no other strong feelings.
I know, I wonder if Chinburg has a plan for the rec fields.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that is the elephant in the room of that
We
proposal.
submitted that question. I haven't seen the answers yet.
There's 5.83 acres of open rec space in sort of the central part of the map. And knowing that property really well, it would be great for trails, but it's not flat. It's not close to flat.
There's only one flat part of that property,
There
and
is.
it's where the fields are right now.
Yep.
But can it be made?
Not really.
I think it would be really hard you'd be digging into a hillside or adding fill to.
It's pretty steep. For
It's not like the rest of the golf course.
Yeah, it is, but there's sections
I guess I'm not.
sections of that the golf course, specifically here in the central section. If you're walking on the trail, it can feel relatively flat, but once you start thinking about kicking a soccer ball on it, I think it would be impossible.
I like that idea that because in the executive suites, when I saw that little cafe, I was like, oh, we would all be there every
with
Tuesday and Thursday evening, because or
Mm.
like Saturdays and Sundays, like that is like the entire town that has children of a certain age is there. Like the entire town is there. And if there's a coffee shop there as well, like
Agreed, and that community again, this is housing first, this second, but that community connection I think is really lovely.
Could we eliminate, I mean, just from what I'm hearing, could we eliminate DEW and Penrose at this point and just dial into the other two?
Sure.
I feel comfortable with that.
Should we vote?
how about Aaron and Rowan? Do you guys have any input? Do you have any thoughts?
So here's what I'm thinking, and I'll preface this by asking, like, is there an appetite for this group to have another very short meeting either at the end of this week or next Monday to sort of marinate on what this discussion is and maybe develop sort of a clear set of kind of tasks for us for all to do, and then we come back and we sort of have a very focused discussion based on that. Well, and if the answer is yes, then what I would suggest we do is sort of have some discrete tasks to do, and then we can come back and have a very short meeting and kind of come up with some messaging and some comments that we can forward to the city council. I'm afraid right now is we're kind of winging it right now, and it's fine if we do that. But I think if we just gave it a little more time, a little more focus, we might be able to come up with some more focused questions and comments. But that would necessitate us to having another meeting.
I think that this discussion is very fruitful, and I'm getting a lot out of it. And at the same time, I agree. I would have a hard time putting all of this into a proposal at the moment from the Planning Commission as a cohesive. And I'll just say that I'm generally around at this point and could be available for a shorter meeting.
What would be the open meeting logistics for a Friday meeting?
Well, other than
No.
being Friday, having Monday, Tuesday,
breaking the cardinal
Thursday,
of
night
never
meetings this
scheduling a
week.
meeting.
Yeah.
It is possible because it is within the window to get that legally warned.
It would next Monday be too late?
Well, yeah, Aaron has the email about feedback.
I mean, I think if we get it to them on Tuesday morning, we'll be fine. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, the trick is Monday is the Development Review Board and DRC. They've got Orca and they've got the location here, so it would have to be either an all remote Zoom meeting or some other format.
Does Thursday work for anybody?
Thursday is
the Country Club Road
Country
meeting.
Club
Oh,
Road.
duh. Oh, yeah, I knew that. Okay, sorry.
Well, Mike, do you need to be present?
Technically, I don't need to be present. You guys are more than welcome. I just have to get everything set up and give somebody the information on how to open the meeting to be host.
Okay.
Like a Monday Zoom meeting?
I'm available. Or Friday.
I can make it work.
Yeah, I could too.
Either one works for me.
I'd probably prefer a Monday rather than a Friday.
Me too.
What do you have plans for Friday nights?
Friday night hangout with you guys also sounds great. I know.
Wait, but Rowan, you were going to weigh in. I wanted to hear your thoughts.
I appreciate that. I was gonna partially say I am pulling a little bit of the new kid card where I'm still trying to understand all of this. But from our discussions, I think prioritizing multiple different kinds of units is going to be critical so that you can also have a succession within the neighborhood too. So you start with 0 or 1 bedroom, and then you're able to move up and stay within the local community. I think having spaces where people can go to is going to be a big draw. And I think just thinking down the road, if we want to really keep people here, having a sense of home, I think will be critical. And so I think, like you were saying, pulling in the community from downtown up into there, and then having folks make sure that they know they're invited into the downtown as well, whilst it may be an ability as well to preserve the downtown too, if we're able to pull everyone together in these two areas and make sure that we all see that there's a clear connection between them. So I can't say I have a favorite between the proposals, but I'm definitely going to review and come prepared for Monday with more opinions. But I think those are my priorities, is just making sure that everyone feels connected to each other will be critical for keeping people here. And I think also the workforce piece is actually really interesting and going to be a really critical piece too, just because we know we have a shortage and we're trying to build in the trades. And I have to go through and review, but I wasn't sure if there's a plan for engaging with the local workforce or creating registered apprenticeship programs or connecting with the local CTE centers or schools or anything like that within the proposals, because I think that would also be a really important piece to pull in as well, if possible. Or maybe a question that we can ask as well is, what is your plan for strengthening the local workforce and helping build the folks who are going to engage in it? Because we've got folks in CTEs and in high schools who we could potentially pull into these projects, giving them a career path, family sustaining wages, and a way to stay in the community as well. So maybe something to consider.
Okay, so Gabe, how does Monday look for you? Gabriel is here.
It would have to be, I'm flying on Friday. It would have to be Monday.
Okay. Okay, so are we all agreed?
I'll work with Aaron and Maria to put together an agenda that's clear that we aren't going to have a in-person location. It'll be a Zoom meeting exclusively to consider these.
How upset are people going to be about that?
About a Zoom, it would be public Zoom meeting.
Just one.
No public meeting. Yeah,
I'm fine with it personally.
And yeah, as I said, there may be options that you considered. Like we said, a lot of what we've heard from other places is even if there isn't a single one that's like, that's the proposal we're going with.
Right.
Sometimes it's, I like how this group did this one and that group did that one. And if we could get, these two to work together, or just to go through and say, to ask questions, to go through, could they do, as we've heard the question for Penrose a number of times, including one that went out to go through and say, would you be amenable to having more options that would be owner occupied? And they said, well, it's not their model, but they would be willing to work with somebody in these other areas. So if you've got suggestions that are like, well, actually, I kind of like this, but that needs to get changed, or maybe EquiSuite, that works, but does that work? And I think there are pieces that people look at and can take. So not trying to go and steer you to one way or the other, just to kind of put out there that you may find that there isn't one perfect solution. And even the one you pick, you might all go and agree, we like this one, but we still have 3 questions. We really would like to know this. And those are really valuable for the, actually any question on any of them or any comment on any of them is valuable. So even if you were to go through and do a commission thing, this is what we liked about Chinburg, this is what we didn't like. This is what we liked about DEW, this is what we didn't like. Here's the question we had on Executive Suite. Here's what we liked and didn't like. That format, all of that going back to the subcommittee is helpful, because that's what they're trying to get an understanding of, is what are people's questions. Because when we've looked at these individually and then we sit down and talk about them, what we find is I'll notice things somebody else doesn't, and somebody else noticing things I don't. And those are the things that raise the red flags. We're like, that's one we've got to ask them about, because that's going to be important. So if you notice something that none of us have, then that'll be a valuable input.
It was
Yeah,
great
it's
for all of
all-
them to put these proposals. It's very labor and it's cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of cost that
People
goes
put a
into
lot of
just
different effort
doing
into these.
these proposals. So that's great that we had 4 different people put in a lot of effort.
Yeah, the big picture was, there was a lot of doubt when we started this as to whether housing is economically viable to do and can anybody do anything. And that was why we put the RFP together, was let's just put it out there and see developers. If you had this for $1, what would you do? And could you do something and put something together that's viable? And we got 4 proposals, 4 very different proposals. So it's not like everybody all went to the exact same box. They came up with a variety, and there's value to being able to look at the variety and seeing what is possible in the market and what's not possible.
One last question I have about some of this stuff. You saying, oh, if you had this for $1, it kind of jogged my memory. The city's selling this land for $1. And then some of these proposals have a lot of affordable housing, or they're looking for tax abatements on top of getting it for $1. Like, what is the effect on the grand list of some of these proposals? Obviously, like, our goal is to get more housing, but if one of these proposals can do it without also, not contributing to the tax roll, yeah, I don't know. That's a question that I have, I guess.
Yeah, and the committee is looking at a couple of different pieces. One is we've got that individual who's looking at, is the project viable?
Yep.
They're looking at the pro formas to go through and say, is this just a pipe dream, or is this something that actually can pass muster? This we'll look at a proposal and say this will cost $80 million. Does this firm have the ability to get that much capital to build that project out? Another related piece is to your question. Okay, for us to build the infrastructure for these projects, one way they keep their costs down is that we're going to use CHIP. This is a tax increment finance to build the roads and the infrastructure. The only way that works is if you're paying taxes. So we've got to generate enough tax revenue to do it. And if you're a lot of tax exempt or paying less taxes, are you going to generate enough increment to actually pay for those infrastructure that you need? And that's a question. And the answer may be, yeah, that's perfectly fine. And the answer may be no, in which case we go, well, now we have an issue. So they may be viable as a project and then turn out to be not viable for the CHIP. And that's what they're going to be looking at. The subcommittee will be looking at, to make sure it's viable over here and it's viable here, because those are the 2 pieces. And it takes a lot of factors. Like, if you're tax exempt, that's great. We've built a lot of affordable housing. We've gotten a lot of people who are on the margins. We've gotten them into housing. That's good. That is a definite public good. But to make that happen, we would need to take out bonds with everybody else to make that happen. But that may not be the case. It may be these are all economically viable, and that's why we have financial experts who are looking at those, and not me, because I am not the financial expert. But we'll have that input. And again, what we're looking at here is what do we like and don't like about these pictures, and summaries. So I will work with Aaron and Maria and get that set up for next week, for a Zoom only meeting, and we will figure that out at that point. And we'll take that input, and get that over to the subcommittee.
And can you confirm that getting questions to them by Tuesday morning?
Yeah,
That'll be fine.
yeah, they're going to have to spend a lot of time compiling,
Okay.
because we expect to be having a lot of input, or we're hoping to have a lot of work to do. We're hoping a lot of people go online and participate and give us comments, and that we have a lot of this stuff to summarize, because that's what we want to see.
Has there been participation? Do you have a sense of participation at this point?
I haven't been over to check with Evelyn. She's been the one coordinating it, and I was going to get over and ask her that question today, and I kind of got busy.
Okay, any final comments before we move on? No. Okay, so going on to developing our guiding principles for the zoning amendments.
I thought the next agenda item's the floodplain.
Oh, you wanted to move it to like the way back.
Yeah, well, we can do whatever you want. I was just looking
Alright.
at that's what I mean.
I'll just run through the river hazard.
The river hazard will be relatively quick. So we have some hard copies.
Oh.
If you're, I've got one
Oh.
hard copy for you.
Okay. Oh, there's one more extra. Like,
But I did email them out. If anyone else wants a hard copy, we can get them. So it's we have a red line version that was sent out earlier. I thought it was in the packet and it wasn't in the packet. So I sent it out to all of you in an email, probably about 5 o'clock-ish. So you do have it in digital. If you want a paper copy, just ask me for it and I'll print one out. So 2 years ago, we adopted an interim set of river hazard regulations, and interim regulations are good for 2 years and they're going to expire in April. So we needed to re-adopt those and make them permanent. And as a part of that, we also went through and just made a bunch of corrections, little things that we'd noticed that needed to get corrected. You won't see there's not a lot of change in there. One of the changes you'll see is with historic structures. We had some conflict and some issues with how we define and work with historic structures. We had kind of embedded it into non-conforming and it really didn't work. Just a regulation structures 101, and it wasn't working. So we pulled that out and made a better section. But for the most part, the interim change that was in 2 years ago was to prevent people from converting non-residential space to residential space if it's below base flood elevation. So that really, what we were doing, after the flood, we had identified like 12 to 15 buildings residential buildings where water had gotten into the first floor, where there's a residential unit on the first floor. So we went through and we purchased 3 of them, bought them out and demolished them. 3 more we're elevating. We've got a number of others that we're trying to work on, different efforts to get them elevated in the future. So we're trying, that's our goal. But then as fast as we were doing that, the commercial landlords were having a real hard time filling their commercial space. And so they were coming in and converting their commercial space to residential space. We're like, well, this is going in the wrong direction. We don't want people in the first floor. But it's a policy decision. We brought it to City Council and City Council agreed. If you're going to convert non-residential to residential, you have to elevate that first floor to make it safe. And mostly it comes down to this time of year right now. The example I always use, in 1992, when we had the ice jam, the downtown flooded in about 15 minutes. And we were very, very fortunate in that it happened in the afternoon and everybody's awake and everybody's there. It could have just as easily had an ice jam happen at 2:30 in the morning. And you can think about a house filling up with 32-degree water and ice at 2:30 in the morning and going into your bedrooms and that being the situation. And that is just, that would be really life-threatening to a lot of people. So it was basically that we really should have as a goal, residential structures should all be above the base flood elevation. So there's some buildings like French Block and other things where the residential units are on the second floor. The first floor might flood, but it's commercial. That's okay. You can continue to use those, but you can't put new residential into those buildings. So, so that was why we did it. And we felt that was a life safety issue. And so now we need to make that permanent along with a few of these other minor changes. So if you go through and if you have any questions, I'll go through this in more detail. The next meeting in 2 weeks is the public hearing. We have to warn these, so it was warned in the paper. There's going to be a public hearing in 2 weeks. And I'll have more of a PowerPoint and I'll go through in a little bit cleaner, a little bit more detail of specifically what are the changes. And if you have any questions, by all means, email me and let me know. Now we can do development guiding principles.
Okay, so if people have questions, they should email you.
Yes.
Preparation for our next full meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, moving on to our guiding principles. Gabe sent Aaron an email with his initial ideas about this. Have any of you thought enough about it to write anything, or have you like come up with a list in your head?
Yeah. My thoughts were looking at the city plan, and it talks about our, we have identified 3 priorities that anchor this plan. So the priorities that anchor the city plan, I thought would also make really good guiding principles for the Planning Commission. Number 1, an urgent need to develop new and affordable housing stock. So new and affordable housing could be one. Number 2, the continued support and growth of Montpelier's businesses. And then number 3, improving the city's aging infrastructure and roads. So thought that was at least a good starting place for 3 potential guiding principles.
Okay, so I also thought we were going to do something kind of more holistic. Gabe had like very specific principles that he wanted to do, which I thought was like an interesting take. So Gabe, do you want to talk about them, or can I?
Why don't you go ahead? I'll get the email up and I can answer questions if people have questions. It was mostly based on things that we already were talking about during the review.
Right.
And I thought it seemed like we were having, I don't know, there was full consensus, but at least it seemed like several planning commissioners were of the same mind. And so if you want to just go through them, that's great. And then I could answer questions.
No, I like how specific it is, because I think everyone wants more housing. I think it is difficult to figure out how to actually accomplish that.
Well, I think that the planning commissioners want more housing. And I only say that because these should be guiding principles for us.
For us.
And I think that we should have a combination of both upper level and very specific. Very specific will be essential when we go to actually change the zoning. But if we're thinking about guiding principles and what is moving us forward, I think that we should be looking at upper level as well, and to be able to state very clearly what our intentions are and what our guiding principles are for us as a body, and also for the public.
Yep. So Gabe, his first one was everything that can be approved administratively should be done that way. So if you have a stamped plan designed by a licensed professional, barring major subdivisions, I'm not sure why the DRB weighs in at all. Number 2 was consolidate as many zoning districts as possible. Number 3 was make character of the neighborhood language less prescriptive. And acknowledge that a future built environment will look different. And then 4 was, I don't know if this is a guiding principle, but it's something that he wants to see done. And I think I do too. Raising the height limit downtown. Just economically, because anything new will now have to satisfy the river hazard area regulations. And so you kind of the first floor is no longer usable space. So developers need some height. If they can't use one whole floor of the building anymore, they need to add another one on top. I really liked, so the first one, everything that can be approved administratively should be done that way. It's very blunt. I like it. I think it's very specific. Like, can this be administrative? Yes or no? But then during the course of the day, as I was thinking through these, I thought a guiding principle could be us just figuring out what should the DRB review? Like, what do we think should go to the DRB? As opposed to like, what should we peel back from the DRB? It's kind of like, well, what is their purpose? And what is the kind of thing that they can be used for, as opposed to, I don't know, like the negative.
And can I just throw out the reason? So my interpretation, the reason I went more specific is I thought what Aaron was asking us to do was to give Mike and crew some guidance, because they're going to do a red line for us, right? They're going to go through, and they already were taking notes as we were working. And so it was, to me, it was like more specific. And certainly we could have conversations about, we're going to see red lines and we're going to have a chance to edit. And we could think more about, what that might mean to have what things should go to the DRB. But this was more of like, hey, Mike, Meredith, as you're working through it, like, here's some things generally we all kind of would like to see to the extent possible. And there could be reasons that we don't want to do this, right? And we're open to that as well. But that was kind of where I came with these ideas.
And is that Mike's understanding as well? So if we put together these guiding principles, this is then what Mike and staff will take to do their redlining work?
I think we're going to have to be a little bit more specific on some of that stuff than just like saying, hey,
sure,
have at it.
Agreed.
We're probably come back to you with a number of questions is what we'll, if we know what the guiding principles are. And I think that's the housing committee was, I think, the ones who were kind of asking, well, what are you guys using as your guiding principles? And this would help to give a certain framework of what we should be doing. And then Meredith and I can start building like administrative approvals as much as possible. Meredith and I can start building questions that go through and say, here's an opportunity in steep slopes that's currently written this way.
Yeah.
If we wanted to do this, we could adjust this and to say it in this way or to do it in this way. And would that be what you guys would like to see? And then we can go through and develop a red line. Because what we don't want to do is just throw stuff out and say no and throw stuff out. There's a lot of work to building the red line. So we would probably go through and say, all right, we already kind of know these are some easy things that you guys probably say, yeah, let's do that. Those are the straightforward ones. And then we're going to probably have some questions, especially consolidate zoning districts. This is going to be one we're going to probably come in and say, it probably makes sense to, here are the easy ones. Get rid of this one, get rid of this one, get rid of this one. Now, do we think the riverfront is similar enough to mixed use residential to just merge those two into one district? Here would be the pluses and minuses. Here are a little bit of the differences in context. Could we merge Urban Center 2 and Urban Center 3?
Mm-hmm.
That being East State Street or Main Street and Berry Street. Those are the start of those two areas. Are Urban Center 2 and Urban Center 3. We really can't merge Urban Center 1 because that's block style. So those are buildings that are side by side. Mm-hmm. But once you get past the school street, then you've got the separate buildings, and that's a different architectural style. So we should discuss. Now, if we did that, if we merged them all into one, then people could go and build buildings that connect those buildings to make another main street that just continues with block style construction. That's an option, but we really need to make a decision if whether that's what we would do. But we can come through and say, here are a bunch of options. We could merge 1,500 with 3,000. That absolutely makes sense. That's an easy one. Everyone should say yes to that one. Now we've got 3,000 and 6,000.
Yeah.
Or do we merge 6 and 9 into one? Those are just the questions where we kind of put your hands up and say that's a policy decision. We can go either way, but if we're going to merge them, that's where we would make those kinds of decisions. Rural is always going to be rural. We're going to get rid of the municipal district. And then we may need a new district, or maybe we'll create another district for the gasoline alley. That's always been a funky one. Kind of merged into Riverfront right now. So Dunkin' Donuts is in the same zoning district as Berry Street.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, those are completely different. They're just not the same. So how do we handle those? But we can go through and pick those out and make it different. And how many get consolidated, I don't know. But we can certainly start crunching those down.
Yeah.
And then the character less prescriptive, we've talked a lot about that. I think we can have that discussion. The question for there we might bring up for you to decide is, right now in our zoning, we have neighborhoods, we have character of the area for the districts, and we also have neighborhood descriptions. Do we get rid of the neighborhood descriptions and just go to character of the area and then put in a future-based character of the area that's less specific and more future oriented of what we expect? Because currently, as everyone pointed out, they're describing the way things are today, which makes it difficult to change. If you've got something that requires character of the area, then it can't be different. It has to be the same. So I think we can have conversations, we can ask questions that fit each one of these. And if people have more to add, it gives us the ability to build those questions where we know we've heard what everybody said, and we can build questions and bring them back and say, we talked about this and this meets this objective. What do we think?
Well, I think that I think our comments in the past 10 minutes have sort of run the gamut of really upper level to and nitty gritty. And so I think that for guiding principles, what I hear is, for the most part, that sort of upper level thinking. If it's the housing committee that's really interested to understand what our guiding principles are, I think we should start with city plan and what Leah's brought. I actually think that the specificity that Gabe is bringing is, it doesn't go as far as Mike was just going. So it can kind of be two-tiered. Our guiding principles are upper level, big bullet points, and then a little bit more of details. Here's what we're thinking of for formulating our ideas around specific changes moving forward, taking points from Gabe's. And if there's anything to add in those spaces, I think that could formulate our guiding principles.
That sounds good to me. I have a question, and I want to say it before I forget. With this idea of trying to get things approved administratively as much as possible, which is great. I'm just wondering if, Mike, you anticipate having to add a lot more words into the zoning in order to get things approved administratively. And if another goal that we want to have is to reduce the language, are we going to be adding a lot more words to make sure that Meredith can approve things? I'm just curious.
I think for the most part, we have a lot of the language in there. So I don't think it's going to add that much. And there's going to be a number of places that we've pointed out we can shorten. So I'm not expecting that when we get done, we're going to have a longer document.
Okay.
It's going to be shorter. And, certainly if you go in and do something like remove the neighborhoods, that crushes things down, and we start taking out the architectural standards. Remember, we had the conversation, maybe we will use our design review regulations and our design review board. So we'll have two design review districts, one where everything is regulated in the design review, which is what we do right now in the downtown area. But once you get outside of the downtown, only major site plan projects over a certain size. You're building a new Caledonia Spirits. Okay, that's got to go through design review, even though it's not in the design review district. Or maybe, if the Country Club Road buildings aren't built, it might be like, well, that's over a certain size that might need to go through design review because it's bigger than 5,000 square feet. Whatever the cutoff is, we would have some rules that would say, if what you're building is bigger than this, needs to go to design review. Think of another Tractor Supply or another thing like that. We could go through and say, we're not going to have design review standards, but we're going to, and just doing that, each zoning district right now has its own design review standards. Well, those would all get stripped out. Each one of those districts gets shrunk down. So we might end up losing a lot of words over here and then adding some in over here because it's just necessary.
Also, when I think about administrative approval, that's a thing that happens now. I just think that what we'll be doing is sort of expanding the thresholds. For instance, when James had to come in for his curb cut, he was finding himself in a situation where anyone subdividing in Montpelier, not anyone, 91% of people subdividing in Montpelier would have to come up in front of the Development Review Board because of the thresholds that we have set that are currently set in the zoning district. So if we change those, in the zoning regulations, if we change those numbers, then a lot more of these subdivisions and access curb cuts will just simply be administratively approved. So it's a lot of like changing of thresholds as I see it, and where waivers don't have to be approved by the DRB. They're simply approved through administration because our zoning regulations allow for that.
Awesome.
That's the way that I interpret it.
And I feel like I derailed your previous comment about, the different tiers, so we can go back to what you said.
Yeah, that was just my idea. We could expand upon that, or I don't know what the next steps forward would be if people agree with that in terms of like guiding principles.
But what's there and what's not there is also important for us as we're working on it. And I think Leah made the point, it's like, are we talking about making the document smaller? That's not one of our guiding principles, at least not at this point. Our guiding principle is not to make this document 40 pages long. So but if that were a guiding principle, then I would be bringing to you different questions of, okay, well, if that was our goal, then these are the decisions you would have to make. So we could write a red line version to accomplish that. Because ultimately, I'm staff, you guys are going to be making those policy decisions. So if the policy decision was to shorten this up, I would give you the reasons why it's a bad idea. But ultimately, if you say, Bill, my former boss, his famous one was like, if they tell us to pave the river, we're paving the river. We could tell them why it's a bad idea and everything else, but ultimately, they make the policy decisions and it's our job to implement them. So whatever you think is important for Meredith and I think these 4 are really good ones. And if people have other ones that we think are critical, then that helps us, like we said, be able to build those questions and bring those ideas back to you so we can not have this I don't want this to take years. I want this to take months.
Yeah.
And the faster we can kind of be able to bring you questions and you guys give us answers, we can start to put pen to paper and make this happen relatively quickly. So that way we can get this process moved through, because it'll benefit everybody when we get there. And we'll have a couple other recommendations that we need to do just based on changes of state law, the tier 1A status that we've mentioned, which is if we want to do that, we might have to make some tweaks to our regulations regarding traffic. And we'll make those recommendations to you. So you've got all that information.
So for the process of this, in the next meeting or the meeting after that, are we going to try and go through it again, chapter by chapter? Are we going to have like a more general conversation to start with these questions and then potential red line?
I think if you're comfortable with and we can always amend these, because Gabe's are just a little bit more specific. We can kind of take those and we can start building on those and come back to you with the questions at the next meeting. And that way you guys can start giving us the feedback. And then hopefully by the time we get to April, we're in a position where we can start bringing you some red lines and then maybe bringing you more questions to go through and say, okay, here's our first set, and maybe we start with some parts of part 2, you know, or part 1 and part 2, start about the zoning districts. And I might just have to work with Meredith to figure out strategically, where do we need decisions first? So that way we're not revising part 2 3 different times. If we have this answer first and then this answer and then this answer, then when we get to part 2, we can do a whole bunch because we have a whole bunch of answers. So I might just have to work with her, but I think what we would do is to go through a number of questions that we can bring to you and options, and then have you guys make decisions. And then as we're working on those, we can present those to you and say, all right, this is where the new red line looks like. These are the changes that we made and why we made them. And oh, by the way, we've got 3 more questions to ask you because we're going to keep working on the red line. So that way we're not, you know, I'd rather see this a little bit more iterative, where we're getting some questions, getting you some red lines, giving you more questions, getting more red lines, and kind of working our way through. I think that might work a little bit more efficiently, because by the time, if we did all questions and then went through and did all the answers, they may end up not working together ultimately, and then we'd be back to ask more questions. So by kind of walking ourselves through it, we'd be able to go through and say, oh, here's what we found. Here's a couple more questions about this.
I have a thought on the planning, well, the zoning regulations generally, and maybe this is what makes it a principle. But I've said, like, throughout this process that I see these regulations as restrictions on construction. And maybe acknowledging that sometimes the public interest is justified in restricting construction or restricting any development. Like, I keep going back to like the frontage rules, and I don't see the public interest in having 4 feet of frontage versus 30 feet of frontage versus, you know, it doesn't seem to affect public safety at all. Like, I don't understand why it's in there and what the public's interest is in this. And so I think having something that kind of like justifies why we have these zoning regulations at all. You know, that there is a public interest in regulating development, and each of the zoning regulations should be able to like justify itself. I don't know that all of our zoning regs can currently justify themselves in that sense.
So I guess the way I would answer that is, when I used to do this at the regional level in Lamoille County, we had 3 towns that had 5 towns that had zoning and 5 towns that did not. And so occasionally I would be called out to go and talk to a town, Eden or Johnson, that doesn't have zoning. And, you know, we would just start to have a general conversation about regulations, and really the answer I used to always give everybody was, you know, 90% of the rules are for 10% of the people. We all know who those 10% of the people are. They're the people that will dump their waste oil in the river because there's no rule that says I can't. So we have to make a rule that says you can't dump your waste oil into the river. You actually have to take it and have it processed. So there's always people who give us a reason for needing to have certain rules. The town of Cambridge, I helped them adopt subdivision regulations because they had a developer who was building subdivisions that you couldn't fit fire trucks down. The roads were so narrow and the driveway curb cuts were so narrow that if you had to send the fire trucks up in a very particular order to make sure that the equipment was in the correct order, and the water truck was last because the water truck would have to get back out. But there was no hammerhead at the end. There was no turnaround. There was no way of being able to do it. And it was on a very steep slope. So after you got all the fire trucks up, they all had to back down the hill. And in January, they slid off the hill, brand new pumper truck, jammed up into the ditch. And they were like, we've got to be able to do something. It's like, well, you got to have regulations. And the reason why Cambridge now has subdivision regulations is because of one development, and I won't out them, but I really wish we could always go name every regulation after the reason. That's why we have to have a regulation that says you have to have a road that fire trucks can fit down and has a turnaround at the end. Because if we don't make it a rule, there's somebody out there who's going to go and build it without it. And then you end up with a $500,000 public fire truck in the ditch with no way of getting the wrecker above it because it's a dead end road. So you can't get above it to winch it back out. And it was a big project. And it turns out that the road foreman was also the fire chief. So it was a very short sell to go through and say, it's enough of this. They can build roads because it's not that hard. So, but yes, there are certain rules where certain rules are, I guess we would call it antiquated now. They were in for a reason in the past. That maybe are less useful and we can continue to evaluate them. But and there are a number of rules that we have, like the curb cuts, that our curb cut rules just don't make sense. They're not for our community. Those would make sense for maybe Route 12 as it's heading towards Worcester because it's a higher speed and you want to have those controls. But when you're in a little neighborhood, you don't need to have offset. Well, if you can't be directly across, then you got to go to the DRB to get a waiver. It's like, no, you're going to be perfectly fine. Every neighborhood in the city is offset. So there are a lot of those that we can go through and fix. So
I think that's, sorry, I think that's what I'm talking about. I feel like right now our zoning, I am pro-regulation. I was a regulatory lawyer, but there is this feeling that I keep getting from the developers is that they feel like very hemmed in by all these regulations and it's hard for them to wade through it. And so at this point, we are kind of trying to peel back the over-regulation, like having roads wide enough for fire trucks to go down. There's an obvious justification for those rules. That's, but I think it's useful to think of each of these rules as having to justify itself. Like, why do you exist? Are you actually making our city better?
I think, Maria, I am in a complete agreement. I don't know how you like wordsmith that, but I think an overarching, like if you're a regulation, there should be a purpose, right? Like you should not be in our regs if there's not a public need.
I would say, and this goes back 100 years, right? Health and safety, right? That's the guiding principle of like, is this necessary? That zoning was ostensibly created, at least justified,
right,
under the headline of health and safety. And obviously getting your fire trucks where they need to go affects health and safety. The color of your paint on your building does not affect health and safety.
And we don't regulate color.
And
we did remove that.
But, just like,
yep.
Right. Like Mike was saying, curb cut stuff on certain roads, there's a health and safety reason for it. In a lot of our parts of town, low speed limits, there's not a health and safety reason for it.
What about the perspective of zoning regulations being seen as permissible as well? So in the sense that like we don't necessarily remove, I'm going to go back to the driveways. We don't remove that section, but we take it from 45 feet down to 0 feet, and it says that explicitly in the zoning regulations. Is that a space where if it's going to be 0 feet, then we just remove it all completely, or do we keep it in there as sort of like it's on paper? The regulations say 0 feet, and that's what we go back to. So are there spaces where we remove or we sort of expand the thresholds?
Yeah, I do like the idea of expanding the thresholds.
I think building heights fall into that category. Well, not quite, but we can expand building heights to a place where most developers coming in would not need to go get a waiver for height, for instance.
Yeah,
Just to
you
be
know,
clear, most of them don't at this point.
something that
Yeah.
Mike has said, in the past, that having some of the, like, having language makes it easier for people to do stuff, right? As
Right.
opposed to not having anything in there. I think that's kind of
Yeah, that's kind of along the line. That's sort of the argument that I'm making for just
Mhm.
argument's sake. I mean, just for discussion's sake.
Because the idea would be that then, like, the neighbors can't come in and complain because like, no, it's entirely permissible, 0 feet right here. Is that the idea?
That's the idea.
Is there such a thing as permissible zoning regulation? This is what you are allowed to build and
Yeah.
no one is allowed to complain about it.
Well, it's sort of thinking about the character of the area, character of the neighborhood, and what the new language could be. More permissible.
Well, 7:23. Did we have an idea of like coming up with like 3 proper statements of principles to share? And Gabe has shared his.
I think it's an important thing to put down on paper. I don't think that we can. One of the spaces where I struggle is that wordsmithing in a open committee, not open, like a verbally, can be really challenging. I really like to be able to work on a Word document. I know there's really strong restrictions around that, but I'm wondering if yeah.
Well, we could create a draft. We've done this, right? You could drop all the things that Leah mentioned. You could drop, Maria, you probably could come up with some language that reflects what you said and what Tim said as well, right? To be, some guiding principles. And then if you guys are up for including my 4, that gives us a place to all look at, and we can have that. And that can be out there. And then we can come back in and we can wordsmith it together, but we've all had a time to look at it and think about it.
Yeah.
I think that sounds good.
I think if we called just to help things out a little bit, Leah's as principles, because I think those would be more principles and Gabe's are more objectives. That might help to frame it a little bit differently.
That sounds good.
Because his is really looking as objectives to administrative approvals as much as possible, consolidate zoning districts. These are measurable objectives that we can check a box on. Character less prescriptive, raising height limits downtown. Maria, maybe there's one that can get wordsmith. Maria's comment on the DRB and what's their purpose or their what should be going to the DRB, and maybe we massage that into one that we can work on. But whether it's a principle or a specific objective, we can kind of fit those in. And as I said, Meredith and I will continue to work on these to bring you guys some ideas for the next meeting in 2 weeks. And we'll get you guys ready for next week.
Leah, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna meow into the microphone.
Like,
I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree with those 2 classifications. That makes sense to me. So
okay.
I'll just add on to that. I think having objectives or goals will allow us to revisit it after they've been completed and then create new ones in vein of the principles that we do decide on. So we're able to continuously have this kind of like objectives, goals, measurable work that we're able to do, all in light of the guiding principles that we've decided. So a little bit more specific that can change as well as needs change versus having principles that are able to stand the test of time a little bit more, that are a little bit broader.
Okay, so it sounds like Tim and I are going to email our wordsmiths.
Let's do it.
Okay. To Aaron, who will pull it. He's not on anymore.
Oh yeah.
I guess I'll pull it together.
You assigned to him. He's not here.
I know. So if Sean, I don't know if you had any specific principles or objectives that you mentioned. But anyway, send your
Yeah,
ideas
I'll
to Aaron.
email.
Okay.
Great.
All of y'all.
And then, yeah, I think having something on paper is always so much easier than.
Yep.
Yeah, because I would love to have Gabe's wordage too. I don't.
I know he seemed, well, his like email is just kind of, I think he would probably say that he would want to wordsmith his own into like actual.
Well, I will leave it to Gabe to
Principle.
put out the words that he wants into the world.
All right. I think then we are at adjournment. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. You're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We covered a lot.
No.